How Ireland became the fastest growing economy. This is Ireland, or more specifically, the Republic of Ireland, which is a sovereign nation that hosts 5 million people who are rapidly becoming some of the wealthiest citizens in the world. Ireland now has a GDP per capita of over $80,000, which means it is well above traditionally rich nations and regions like Switzerland, Hong Kong, and Norway, and it ranks just behind statistical outliers like Luxembourg, Singapore, and Qatar. Moreover, Ireland is on track to become the fastest growing economy in a year when most nations have fallen behind. It has achieved this despite historically being very dependent on trade and tourism, which has obviously been much more difficult in a world of closed borders. So it seems there is much to learn from this country that could potentially be adopted in our economies so that we too can share in the fortune of the Irish. Before continuing, dear viewers, if you appreciate the content of this video and are satisfied with it, we invite you to consider the option of subscribing to our channel or supporting us with a donation. Your support is essential for the growth and constant improvement of our channel, and it will allow us to continue producing high-quality content for you. You can do it here below, through the appropriate buttons, subscribe, and thanks. Well, this is what the figures might lead you to believe, but it might not be the whole story. Regular viewers of the channel will know that GDP figures alone can omit some very important details about the true prosperity of a nation and the people who live there. So to see if Ireland is more of a bureaucratic miracle, we need to look at some key areas. How did Ireland become so wealthy despite its history of poverty and oppression? Will this wealth benefit the citizens of the nation? Is this Irish strategy something that all nations could adopt? Oh, and naturally, while we are here, it should go without saying that we will put Ireland in Economics Explains national ranking. This video is brought to you by Trends, the ultimate knowledge center of the internet for entrepreneurs and aspiring ones. With a subscription to Trends, you get exclusive access to live Q&As hosted by leading startup CEOs, not to mention a valuable library of content with articles that I know you will absolutely love reading, like this one on 15 growth hacks to help you grow your startup, or this one on the rise of esports. Try Trends for an entire week or for just $1 by going to trends.co/economicsexplained. Again, this is trends.co/economicsexplained. The link is on the screen now and in the video description below. Now, Ireland is a member of the European Union, and unlike its separated mother, it remained, so this has in many ways been a relationship that the nation has been able to exploit to truly make the country what it is today. We will get to those benefits later, but there are also some important drawbacks. For starters, they are using the euro, which brings with it a host of disadvantages that we have covered in our videos on Brexit, Greece, Germany, and Italy, so I don't want to repeat myself too much here. But in brief, not having control over your own currency means you cannot set your own interest rates, and you are also indirectly responsible for the less prosperous members of the Union. This lack of autonomy means that countries that want to adopt new economic policies or implement new schemes for growth can be limited in doing so. This is part of the reason why most European nations have seen very low GDP growth in the last decade. Nations that are doing well, like Germany, have been held back by places that are doing poorly, and nations that are doing poorly are being trampled by places that are doing well. Despite this unfortunate back and forth, Ireland has managed to almost double its size in the same decade when most member states have gone nowhere, and much of this has to do with collecting all kinds of money. You might have heard the term, double Irish with a Dutch sandwich. It is a fun term used to describe the intricate tax loophole in which international companies exploit intellectual property and corporate expense laws in Ireland and the Netherlands. We have already made a video on this little scheme and found that important institutions like Apple were using it to amass enormous amounts of money without having to pay taxes on it. All those trillions of dollars were parked where else but in Ireland. Now, you might think that trillions of dollars in foreign currency investments sound fantastic, and in a certain sense, it does answer the questions of how Ireland became so wealthy, but not so fast. The double Irish is no more. However, that does not mean the money is gone. In the 2 decades that this system was abused by big corporations, the companies involved amassed trillions of dollars in Ireland, which leads to the second problem. Just because the money is there in Irish accounts does not mean it will benefit Ireland. The entire reason these companies chose to do business in Ireland in the first place is that they did not have to pay taxes. If the country turned around and started taxing this income to direct this money to public services, then these companies would leave and find an alternative in a more accommodating country. And naturally, to provide these services, there are some thousands of well-paid accountants and lawyers working in Ireland, which is a boost for the local economy, but it is not exactly putting money directly into the pockets of the average citizen. But Ireland had a plan. See, it knew that as soon as these companies tried to bring this money back to the United States to use it for reinvestments or dividends or share buybacks, they would have to pay income tax on it. So it was a great way to save tax-free money, but in a certain sense, it put a block on that money being used for anything useful. So Ireland let them use it in Ireland without too many penalties, without the money leaving the country. The companies involved were able to invest in research and development that can benefit their operations around the world. This is a win-win situation. Ireland gets jobs and investments in its local economy, and the companies involved have something to do with their money in a very business-friendly environment. In fact, this friendly agreement goes far beyond this unique tax loophole. Today, Ireland is one of the world's largest tech hubs, with activities ranging from silicon chip production to medical research centers distributed across a population of fewer than 5 million people. The reason why they started operations here of all places rather than in Silicon Valley or Seattle or Shenzhen extends beyond simple taxation and can be more correctly classified as Ireland simply being a great intermediary. This is Shannon International Airport. It is not a particularly notable airport in and of itself, but what lies just outside its gates is the Shannon Free Zone, established in 1959 to encourage companies to set up operations in the country. Before then, Ireland had real difficulty attracting international investment because the whole place was considered very unstable due to its struggle for independence and a series of headlines that did not make global executives particularly enthusiastic about going there for a business trip. This free trade zone, well, that was something to be enthusiastic about. What it did was delineate a 600-acre plot of land around the airport to establish as a commercial park where local import and export taxes and business taxes did not have to be paid as long as the goods did not leave the area. This meant that companies could create production centers in this small area, bring in the pieces, and then ship out the finished products without the high tariffs that were common in the world at that time. Now, you might think, oh, fantastic, another tax loophole, but it was not exactly that. The companies involved still had to pay taxes in any country where they ended up selling their products. They just avoided taxes during the actual assembly phase. In a certain sense, it turned the area into the first and largest airport free trade zone in the world. This little agreement, combined with the nation's strict policies on intellectual property rights, attracted companies like Intel, Lufthansa, De Beers, and GE Capital Aviation Services. In fact, Sony's first international production operation was on the island of Shannon, by the way. Now, to be fair, almost every country in the world at the time could have pulled off a similar trick, but it probably would not have been as popular because Ireland had other things going for it. It had a central position between Europe and the United States, the two largest industrial centers in the world at the time. It also offered a sneaky backdoor into the European Economic Community, the predecessor to the European Union, for American companies that would otherwise have had to pay notable markups on imports into this little European club. Additionally, it was home to a very educated English-speaking population. Being able to produce tax-free silicon chips was all very well and good, but it is not a job that just anyone can do, so this workforce went a long way. The whole system helped boost the local economy, brought companies to an otherwise anonymous airport, and created highly skilled, well-paid jobs in the Irish economy, all of which were paid for by companies abroad. Of course, it must be acknowledged that the system was not perfect. For starters, the whole system revolved around an airport. People who watched our video on the merchant marine will know that most international trade is conducted via ships rather than airplanes, given how much more economical they are to operate on a large scale. This meant that the country could really only attract companies that produced very high-value products like airplane parts, computer components, and diamonds. This was somewhat limiting, but with Ireland's modest population, it could probably be defined as more of a feature than a bug. Even if they had access to mass shipping, low-cost production would never have been their passion. The other problem with this system is that it is a bit outdated these days. Before trade agreements and in a period with important export tariffs spread, this free trade zone was an incredible tool that companies could use. Today, it is a bit useless. In fact, the Shannon Free Zone lost almost all of its special privileges in 2003. But despite today being little more than another industrial center outside an airport, it still hosts over 100 international companies that directly employ over 10,000 workers and tens of thousands more in the rest of the country. At a basic level, this is what has given the country such big parameters. Companies have decided to stay just in Ireland. We recently explored the economy of California, and much of what we found about that state's industry is very similar to what is happening here in Ireland today. Ireland today has nothing particularly attractive. Global tax loopholes have been closed, free trade zones have been made irrelevant, and sure, its internal tax rates are low, but there are cheaper alternatives. The thing that has made Ireland so successful is that there are no other more interesting options that would be worth moving out of it. The important infrastructure now established in the country is very similar in many ways to how Hollywood is the ideal place to make films because it is the home of all the companies and people that make films. Ireland is the go-to hub for financial services and tech development because it is the home of all the companies and people that do these things. Perhaps the best example of this is GECAS, or General Electric Capital Aviation Services. We mentioned them earlier, but I imagine most of you have never heard of this company or know what it does. But what it fundamentally is just a leasing service for airplanes. General Electric will purchase the airplanes primarily from Airbus and Boeing and then lease those airplanes to airlines around the world that do not want to pay hundreds of millions of dollars upfront for an airplane. A side note is that this is a great marketing tool for GE because they will not purchase airplanes for this fleet that are not fitted with GE jet engines. So if Boeing and Airbus want to attract the largest consumer of airplanes in the world, they better think twice before slapping a Rolls-Royce engine on it. To give you an idea of how big this company is, it owns more airplanes than United, Delta, American Airlines, and Emirates combined. At the time of the Free Trade Zone, Shannon Airport was the only logical home for this global operation because it was purchasing airplanes from both Airbus in Europe and Boeing in America and then shipping them to airlines around the world. Today, it could do that from anywhere, but it is already present in Ireland, so it might as well stay. The big question is, do all these multinational operations actually benefit the Irish population? And the answer is, yes, more or less. Obviously, for the people directly involved in these activities, it is fantastic. They will earn a lot of money and will do very well for themselves. But for everyone else, it is causing many of the same problems that we have seen in places like San Francisco. Extremely high rents and a high cost of living are being caused by this influx of foreign investment and are leaving behind the median workers in more traditional roles. This is a serious problem that the country will have to address, or it will face similar social problems to other industrial centers around the world. A two-speed economy. Now, to put it all together, this gives Ireland an average score of 8.6 out of 10, only just falling behind Hong Kong, which isn't technically a sovereign nation, so this score is unbelievably impressive. It goes to show that being in the right place at the right time with the ability to provide the right services is a trait that will pay dividends for a very long time. And being in the right place with the right people is made a lot easier with Trends. Trends isn't just another website with incredibly detailed articles about all the tech and business trends that you definitely need to be aware of right now. No, Trends is much more than that. At its core, Trends is a community of like-minded hustlers and founders, people that you can run your ideas by and perhaps even partner with to build your startup. We would like to know about your experience regarding the topic covered today. Share it with us in the comments and, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask them. We will gladly respond. Your like would be a source of satisfaction for us, and of course, do not forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the upcoming publications.